Hello, this is Dr. Mears, and today we are going to be solving equations by taking square roots. First, let's do a little warm-up just to simplify some square roots. The first one we see is a perfect square. The square root of 16 is 4. Remember, the square root symbol really means what number times itself gives you 16. That's really what it's saying. What number times itself gives you blank, and that blank is what's inside. So for this one, what number times itself gives you 16? 4. What number times itself gives you 18? Now, 18 is not a perfect square, so we're going to have to do some work here. We're going to have to see if there is a perfect square that goes into 18, and there is. We can divide 18 by 9. And when we divide 18 by 9, we're going to get 2, because 9 times 2 gets you back to 18. 9 is the highest perfect square, and this would really work well if you tried to go for the highest perfect square. Now we have to simplify because we can take the square root of 9. What number times itself gives you 9? That number is 3. We cannot take the square root of 2, so we are going to multiply it, and we usually don't put that dot there, but I just want to show you that's multiplication because remember, 9 times 2 is 18, so this is still multiplication. So when we write our answer, we're just going to write 3 times the square root of 2. I'm not going to put that dot does disappear. Number 3, square root of 25, that is a perfect square, that is 5. And number 4, the square root of a negative 25. Now, we cannot get a number times itself that would get us back to a negative number. Because remember, a negative times a negative is always going to give you a positive. So we're going to have to go into the imaginary number system. And this is where this negative number, and I'm going to do some side work over here, negative 25, we're going to be able to take out that negative. That's really a negative 1 times what gets you back to 25, 25. So negative 1 times 25 is 25. Is there a symbol for this? Yes, and the symbol is I. It's a little fancy I. And can we take the square root of 25? Yes, we can. The square root of 25 is 5. So this is going to equal 5i. Now notice, I wrote it like this, I5. You can do that. However, when we do simplify, we do like the I to go on the right side of the number, kind of like we write 5x. It would just be 5i. So these are interchangeable. It can go in front or the left side of the number, or it can go to the right side of the number. But it is usually written like that, 5i. Okay, so our classwork here, imaginary numbers, I can be used to write the square root of a negative number, and usually the square root of negative 1, that is I. Okay, that is the symbol. So if you can divide out a negative 1, just like we did here, negative 1 times 25, then we can change it to the symbol I. So this automatically got changed to I, and this got changed to 25. There we go. Okay, let's do another example. Let's just do the square root of negative 36. So we can divide out the square root of negative 1. What number do we need to multiply to get back to 36? Negative 36 is 36. Negative 1 times 36. And so what we're going to find here is negative 1, the square root of negative 1 is I. Times the square root of 36 is 6. And then I'm just going to write it as 6i. Remember, they are interchangeable. You can change them back and forth. Example number 2, let's do one where we can't really reduce. Let's do the square root of negative 18 so that we can see what we're going to be dividing out. And I'm going to do that work over here because I want to make a little tree. So we have negative 18. Okay, what's the first thing that we're going to be able to divide out? You're right, we're going to be able to divide out that negative 1. All right, times. Now 18, because we already took out that negative 1, 18 is not a perfect square. So we learned up here that we can divide out the largest perfect square could be 9 times, okay, so we have negative 1 times 9. What else do we need here to get back to 18? And that's 2. And so we have -1 times 9 times 2 is going to get us back to -18. These are all factors. So let's now reduce them. We know the square root of -1 is I. We know square root of 9 is 3. And we know we cannot do the square root of 2, so we're just going to write square root of 2. We cannot reduce that any further. Now, how do we put this all together? How do we usually write this? Because this is correct. That's all multiplication. It is correct. But we usually write the number, and then we usually write I, and then the square root always comes towards the right. If you put this over here, it kind of looks like it's underneath, so we want to be careful. So your numbers and the I, the imaginary variable here, I, the letter, whichever one you choose, should really go in front or to the left of that square root. So that's how you're going to see me write these. All right, now that we reviewed I and reviewed perfect squares and we reviewed simplification, let's start solving each equation by taking square roots. All right, so number 5. We have b squared equals 16. So in order to undo a square, we have to do the inverse. The inverse of a square is taking the square root. Okay, square and square root, they cross each other out. So b equals now the square root of 16. You're right, it is 4. However, we're solving now. So is there another number that I can take that we can have times itself? And you're right, we can do -4 times -4. So, because -4 times -4 is a positive 16. So we're going to have a positive 4 and we're going to have a -4 because we're solving now. So there's 2 different answers here. Okay, what's next? N squared equals -37. So we're going to take the square root, and equals, is 37 a perfect square? Nope. Can we find a large perfect square that we can divide 37 by? I don't think so. It's also negative. So I am going to break it down because I can take out that -1 times 37 gets me back to -37. This becomes I. I cannot reduce that any further. No perfect square divides into that evenly. So I'm going to get I times the square root of 37. And remember, we usually write the square roots on this side of the I, on the right side of the I. Okay, next. P squared equals -83. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root, and that cancels out. So P equals, again, -83. 83 is not a perfect square, and there is no perfect squares that we can divide evenly, 83 evenly by. So let's take out that I, because it is negative, and then we attach the square root of 83 by multiplication. There we go. Okay, what did I forget? I forgot a couple things. So these 2, we're good to go, but I forgot something. Because here we have a positive, right? So we had a positive I. Oh, you're absolutely right. We need to go back and we need to do the negative I as well. Because remember, there's 2 answers. There's a positive and there's a negative. And that's why we have n squared here. Here again, positive and negative I times the square root of 83. Oh, I forgot those. Thank you very much for reminding me. Okay, let's do this one. Square root, x equals, can we take the square root of 100? Yes, we can. You're going to tell me that's 10. I can hear you saying 10. But just like we did here, we cannot forget that it's not only positive 10, you're right, it's also negative 10. Oh, so my little mistake of forgetting here kind of led us to opportunity where we now need to make sure that we remember we have to do the positive and the negative. So just checking over positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. Some people might want to write it as x equals plus or minus 10. You can, that's absolutely fine. Other people like to see that there's actually two answers because this just feels like one, but there are two answers. So either way you want to write it is correct, as long as you understand that there is a positive 10 and a negative 10. Same goes for these three. Okay, let's flip it over. There might be a part 2 to this video. I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to get done. I don't want this video going too long. Okay, so number 9, we're moving now into two-step equations. So we're going to have to not only take the square root, but we are going to have to move this minus 3. We have b squared minus 3 equals negative 18. Before we can undo by taking the square root, we have got to add or subtract any numbers here. So taking the square root should be one of the last things most of the time. We are going to see where it could be first, but not with this worksheet. So let's make sure to move everything over before we take the square root. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. B squared equals negative 15. Negative 18 plus 3 is negative 15. Now that we have b squared all by itself on this side of the equal sign, we're going to take our square root. B squared equals 15 is not a perfect square, and there's no perfect square that it can be divided. There is a negative, so that is going to be taken out as I, and then we're going to attach the square root of 15 because we cannot reduce it any further. Number 10, ooh, look at that. N squared minus 10 equals 11. We're going to add 10 to both sides, inverse operations. N squared equals 11 plus 10 is 21. You're right, we're going to take the square root, and if you know what to do here, you're more than welcome to do it. N equals, oh, I forgot something again, didn't I? Yep, there's no perfect square, so this is the square root of 21. What did I forget here? And I can't forget here. You're right, I keep forgetting those negatives. See what I'm doing there? Make sure to remember that you have a positive and a negative. Positive and a negative. And we can't reduce this any further. 7 times 3 is 21. There is no perfect square. So you just leave it. So making sure positive and a negative, positive and negative. If you do want to write it as plus or minus the square root of 21, feel free to do so. Same here. If you do want to write it as plus or minus I times the square root of 15, you're more than welcome to. If this helps you to make sure that you're not forgetting that plus and minus, that's absolutely fine. However, just know that there are two answers. It is squared, so there's two answers. It's squared, so there are two answers. All right, let's move on. Hopefully I'm not going to be forgetting that. Plus 2 and plus 2, because we have b squared minus 2 equals negative 4. Cross that out. B squared equals negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Ooh, you're right. Let's take the square root. So b equals, we cannot reduce that further. However, we can take that I because there is a negative underneath there. So it's I times the square root of 2. I hear ya. And negative I times the square root of 2. I think we're on a roll now. We got this. Okay, number 12. V squared plus 3 equals negative 15 minus 3 minus 3. V squared equals negative 18. Oh, we saw that on the other side, correct? Negative 18. I think we did that actually as an example. So square root, V equals, all right, we can take a couple things out. You're right. There is an I that's going to come out. And we also, the square root of 18, square root of 9, square root of 2. 9 is a perfect square. So square root of 9 is going to be 3. Square root of 2, we can't reduce any further, and that's how you write it. Now, if you're confused how I did that, we did it on the first page. You can just rewind this video, and you can get it there. So I did go over that previously in the video. Number 13, now we're getting into, again, another multi-step. So we went from one step, this was 2 steps, now we're into 3 steps. So we see we have 3 times p squared minus 9 equals 21. So we are going to have to move that 9 over, move that minus 9 over, and we are going to have to move the 3 over. So these are ones that are done where we need to move everything over so we can just have the square term on one side. There are others that are different, but for now, this is our pattern that we're going to follow. So let's add 9 to both sides. So we're going to get 3p squared equals 30. Now, since 3 and p squared are linked by multiplication, we are going to divide it. P squared, we're going to get 30 divided by 3, which is 10. You're right, we take the square root. Is there a perfect square that goes into 10? No. Is 10 a perfect square? Nope. So we're just going to do P equals 10, square root of 10, and square root of negative 10. There we go. I'm catching on with this negative. All right, 8x squared minus 5 equals 107. We're going to add 5 to both sides. We're going to get 8x squared equals 112, I believe. And we are going to be dividing by 8. You're right, dividing by 8. Now I'm just going to be taking my calculator out here and dividing 112 by 8, and I'm going to get 14. So x squared equals 14. Yep, take the square root. Is 14 a perfect square? Nope, it's not. So what are we going to do? All we're going to do is say x equals the square root of 14, and you're right, square root of negative 14. Ooh, we're rolling with the positive negative square roots now. Okay, next one, number 15, and just keeping an eye on the time. That, oh, looking good, about 16 minutes and 30 seconds. N squared plus 1 equals negative 59. Let's minus 1 from both sides. N squared equals negative 60. You're right. Let's divide by 10. You're catching on. N squared equals 60 divided by negative 60 divided by 10 is negative 6. You got it. Take the square root. We're going to be careful now because we have that negative. So yes, you're right. The I comes out. There is no perfect square that can be 6 can be divided by, and 6 is not a perfect square. So it's just going to be I times the square root of 6 and negative I times the square root of 6. Nice job. Okay, number 16. 5m squared minus 1 equals negative 1. Let's subtract 1 from both sides. So we get 5m squared equals negative 2. Let's divide both sides by 5. Don't worry, it's a fraction. That's absolutely fine. So we have m squared equals negative 2 over 5. We're going to take the square root. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because we don't want to have a square root in the denominator. So first, let's take that I out. So this would be I times the square root of 2 over 5 and negative I times the square root of 2 over 5. However, we are going to come back to square roots in the denominator. We will learn about this because we don't like them. So we are going to have to come back to take care of that square root. For now, we are going to leave it like this. For now. I can give you the answer. The answer when we take care of the square root is going to be I times the square root of 10 over 5 and negative I times the square root of 10 over 5. And I challenge whoever wants to take on this challenge to show me why it goes from here or how it goes from here to here. You can come and have a conversation and challenge me and show me why. And yes, you will get some points for that. So I will be coming back to this, but the video is not about this. It's about solving three-step equations. We have 1 minute, so let's do this one really quick. Let's add 1 of both sides. We get 25v squared equals 9. Divide both sides by 25. V squared equals 9 over 25. Woohoo! Square root, square root. Now, when we do the square root, we can take the square root of 9 and we can take the square root of 25. So this works out really nice. Everybody, what is the square root of 9? You're right, 3. What is the square root of 25? You're right, 5. And yes, don't forget negative 3 over 5 as well. Okay, last one. Let's subtract 9 from both sides here. Oh, there's the bell. 327 minus 9 is 318. Divide by 6. Everyone's going to hear that bell in the video. That happens. we get 53 square root n equals square root of 53 and negative square root of 53. And that's all she wrote. All right, under 20. Hope it helped.